Welcome to Navigating the Nervous System. My name is Kristin Cronin-Boone, licensed therapist, professor, and writer. Do you ever wonder why you do the things you do? The answer might just be your nervous system. Come with me as we explore this incredible system and how it drives your thoughts, feelings, and behavior. Let's navigate the nervous system together. Welcome to Navigating the Nervous System, Episode 4, Who's Driving Your Car? So the first couple episodes, we talked about our different nervous system states, safe, stress, and shutdown. We talked about tiny tigers, which are those external triggers that put you into stress or shutdown, and how to categorize and move through them. And then last week, we talked about our thoughts and feelings and how they can get wired with a emotional nervous system response and how to rewire that with a new thought and awareness to the body and the nervous system so that you teach yourself they are not a threat. Those were all external stressors that we mostly talked about. So today we're going to talk a little more about internal stressors and the parts of ourself that try to protect us and what to do about those. This whole episode is based on an idea that I think existentially is out there in other ways as well, but the two I enjoy speaking about are Michael Singer, the author of Untethered Soul, and Dr. Richard Schwartz, who has a doctorate in marriage and family therapy and is the father of a theory called internal family system, which focuses on different parts of self. And the idea is, and I'm going to paraphrase from Michael Singer's book, Untethered Soul, to explain it. The idea is you are not the voices in your head. You are the one that hears them. I'm going to say that again. You are not the voices in your head. You are the one that hears them. So the idea is that those voices, reactions, or feelings or thoughts, that's not you. The real you is the one who is experiencing those things. And when we feel like we become that thought or we really take hold of that reaction, that's kind of a part of ourself taking over and not really our real self. So let's talk about what I kind of call and I think Dr. Schwartz calls the capital S self, the big S. It's funny, I was teaching a class once and they thought I was saying big S, not big S. And it was kind of funny, but really what it is that real big S part of yourself. And the way that you can figure out, is this the true me? Is this the capital S self? Is IFS says that there are 8 C's that you can kind of run through to see if that voice, that thought, that reaction matches these. And the 8 S's are compassion, curiosity, calm, clarity, courage, connectedness, creativity, and confidence. So if you have a thought or a feeling, or even the way that you're reacting that doesn't fit into these, then what we're talking about are different parts that have been created probably from a safe, a stress or shutdown state to protect you. And it doesn't usually come up that you create a part from one experience, but if over time your nervous system knows it needs to protect itself. So let's take something like someone who has a type A personality. Everyone's kind of familiar with like perfectionist, be on time, overachiever, those kind of things. It might be that those personality features, they might be partially personality, but they also may have been created, this part of themselves that feels the need to do things in a certain way and has to be on time, or that perfectionist part was created out of a pattern, not just a one-time thing, but a long time of being told that it wasn't okay, that they were going to get in trouble if they were late, that if they didn't perform, or their family values were that they had to get A's. And so it became a survival mechanism to make sure that they were getting everything done and they were being productive. And so that would be a part that gets created. And when you think about it, this person who's constantly stressed about being on time or getting things done or it not being perfect, that's coming from a place of fear. That's coming from a place of fear that they don't have value, or that they will be looked at in a certain way, or not accepted or not loved because they fail. And so that is why we think of it as a part. Now, that part is not bad. And I think that's really, really important to understand, is that Dr. Richard Schwartz even has a book about IFS called No Bad Parts, because that part was created to protect them. It was really needed to make sure that they fit into their family or their school or their friend group in order to feel accepted, because it is so important. And we're going to talk about this in another episode, but social acceptance is so important as human species. And we do interpret it as a survival threat if we don't feel like we belong. And so this part gets created that tells you, in order to be safe, in order to be loved, in order to be connected, you must be perfect, or you must be on time, or you must, be successful. But that is not the real self, right? It doesn't fall into compassion or curiosity or calm or clarity or courage. It comes from fear. It comes from, this drive to succeed, to be accepted and belonging, right? So it is a protective part. If you remember our states, safe, stress, and shutdown, safe is connected, stress and shutdown are protective. So these parts are protective. And they're not bad. They were useful at one point in our life. But as we become adults and we get to make decisions, and we realize that our stress state is really hard on our body, we want to be able to reorganize these parts. We want to ask if these parts are still helpful, and we want to be able to utilize them when necessary. It's a good thing to be on time. It's a good thing to, be productive and do a great job at your work. But we don't want the part driving the car, which leads me to my analogy. Imagine that you're driving a car. It's a minivan, because we need to have enough room for all our parts. The question is, who is driving your car? Because ultimately, we want that capital S self to be in the driver's seat, or at least to be actively choosing the other parts and their skills, deciding intentionally who's driving the car, right? Now, you can't necessarily walk into a high stakes meeting at work and be curious and calm and creative. You can. Having someone that's in a regulated state is important, but you also are going to need a little bit of drive, maybe just a little bit of stress state to get the job done and come across. Like, it's okay to actively choose to hype yourself up a little bit, or use this part that's so good at what it does. But in day-to-day life, most of the time, that stressful part, and the difference is that part will no longer be working from fear. It will take the skills that it used and be using it with the safe self to be productive and get what we want done in a connected way. So the idea is, if you can start to realize, what parts do you have in your car? Do you have this type A? Maybe you're not type A. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you're a avoider. Maybe it's like, nope, I never want to step into a conflict. I never want to talk about things. I never want to. And that kept you safe. That was important, because maybe where you grew up or your friends or whatever, that wasn't going to fly with you being really open about your feelings. And so that part that's more avoidant, is that still helpful? Is that getting in the way of your relationships with your partner, your family, your friends? And maybe there are times that part is useful, because you don't want to just be open with everybody all the time. If it's a stranger, you want to build trust. And so, kind of checking in with that part. But are you intentionally choosing it, or again, out of fear, just not letting your true self come forward to the conversation? Because this part is like, we can't do that. That's too scary. And so what you can do is start to acknowledge these different parts. And if you don't want to think about the different, more voices in your head, then let's just go back to my safe, stress, shutdown and identify, is this part a integrated safe part? One of my parts of myself that really like connect with others, are helpful or kind, can listen, or open? Or is this a stress part that's like, don't do that? It's judgmental, or I'm just going to wait over here. It's afraid, or, it's getting angry a lot because it's protecting itself. Kind of identifying that, because those stress and shutdown parts, those are the ones we want to befriend. We do not want to tell them no. They did a lot for you. Most of our parts that maybe are not as helpful to us now when we get to be an adult or in different relationships that are different from the ones we had when we were younger, they're not there to hurt us. They were there for a reason. And the question is, does that reason still exist? And can we get to a connected state with the people that we care about instead of pulling up these protective parts, or asking those protective parts to do the really awesome things they do from a safe state context, like, having good judgment and not, telling everyone everything, or being successful and getting a job done and pushing a little bit harder on the days that you do want to do that, but from an intentional place. So let's picture we're in this car, and keep that in your mind. And then think about, as you go through the day, and this is not internal family systems. There is a whole way to identify what we're called managers and firefighters and exiles. And that's not what we're doing here. That's a very interesting theory. And if this resounds with you and you need professional help, you could ask therapists about internal family systems. I'm just giving you a very basic idea of how to externalize our different parts that are created from our nervous system. And so you can picture this car, and then as you go through life, if you're acknowledging, is this a safe state reaction, or is this a stress state or a shutdown state reaction? You can kind of identify if it's a pattern. Now, we all go into stress state and get stressed out at different random things, but is it a pattern? Because if it's a pattern of constantly being fearful of this one thing, or always feeling judged if you're late, or always getting in the same fight with your partner, maybe identify, what is that part that's coming out during that stress or shutdown? Is it this trustworthy part that doesn't trust people? And then kind of figure out, how can I move by calming my nervous system and going up in a safe state and using those 8 C's. You can ask that about each of these parts. So I have my type A stressed out part. I can kind of think about this part of, well, I am compassionate towards this part. This part helped me. This part helped me do really good in school and get good jobs. But it's kind of tiring me out now. I have a job. I don't need to feel like this all the time. It's interesting. Why do I think I feel this way? And what would I say to this part if this was my friend stressing out all the time, right? And that's going to make me come from calm and curious to myself, because I am the self inside that can choose and change these parts by listening to myself and understanding why I react the way that I do, and then doing steps to both get up into that safe state and rewire those thoughts and feelings, reactions for myself, just like we did with the tiny tigers. So you might be thinking, well, how do I know what parts these are? So I'm going to give you a little exercise of whether you want to do it in a meditative way or journal, or just start to become aware throughout your day. Notice when your thoughts or feelings have a judgmental, a defensive, a fearful, any of those vibes to them, because most likely that is a stress or shutdown part. And again, if you're like, well, I don't normally think that, it's just kind of a random thought, that's fine. We all have random stressful or, burnt out thoughts. But if it's like, yeah, I really do think that a lot, or I do always stress out when this happens, and I'm telling myself people are going to think this or people are going to think that, that's stress, that's fear, and kind of trying to understand and just name it. And when you hear that voice being, you're going to be late, this is going to be terrible, everybody's going to think bad things about you, something like that, you don't want to be like, stop. You don't tell your part to stop. I always use the analogy of our thoughts, because they're there trying to get their needs met to protect you. Think about if you've ever had a toddler around or seen someone with a toddler and they're like, mom, 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 mom. If you tell the kid just like, stop, they don't usually stop. But if you're like, hey, I hear you. Thank you. I'm trying to finish something. I'll be right there. Doesn't always work, kind of like your thoughts, but a lot of times it will. Oh, okay. And they'll wait the 2 minutes. And so if you can be like, okay, I hear you. I hear you, type A personality part. I hear you. Thank you. I'm not going to be late. And even if I was, everything's going to be okay. Kind of like talking that part down and believing that you are the one that is in the safe state and you are the one that gets to make the decision going forward, not this other part. And just start to categorize and identify what are these main couple, 3, 4, 5 parts that you have. Like, I have a cynical part. I do not trust people I don't know very easily. And that can be bad when I'm meeting new people to not feel more open. And so I have to work on that. And it can be good when I get a spammy telemarketer. So just kind of working on me being the one that chooses, does this situation call for that part? And not doing it from a fear state, but an intentional like, ooh, I know how to make sure to set boundaries here and ask questions and not give out my personal information, right? Versus getting angry because that protective part is running the show and doesn't want anyone to know anything about me. Those are 2 different reactions utilizing the same skills. And so if you can identify that, then use the analogy of the car to regularly be like, who is driving my car right now? Is it my calm, curious, connected self? Or have I let my stressed out, success hungry part drive the show the last 3 days? Is that why I'm exhausted? Right? Because letting those parts run the show, if you know they're running the show most of the time, that means you're in stress or shutdown. And that means that is taking a toll on your body. So what you really want to do is just, again, start to identify and observe, categorize, and then step back and decide, do I want this? Is this feel right to me, the real me, right? The one that wants to connect with my partner. And I'm not saying you have to connect with, you might be thinking, oh, I don't care. I don't be curious and connect and open with everybody. Okay, fine. Do you want to be connected and open with your family, with your partner, with your kids, with your friends, with certain relationships at work? And are you succeeding at that? And if not, then what are the parts that are taking over to protect you? Again, we need to take those parts and be like, you did a great job. But now I only need you to do these things at this time or this time, not all the time. And as you do this over and over again, going back to our rewiring thoughts and feelings forever episode, the patterns will change and you will no longer feel quite as stressed about being late or quite as bad if you fail at something. Or you might feel a little braver about sharing your feelings with someone relatively new in a safe space. So think about the fact that you are not the voices in your head. You are the one that hears them. And when you hear them, let's get curious and get to know them so you can get to know yourself better. All right. I'm going to give you your practical tool to take with you that will actually help when you notice and maybe you're stressed out because a part took over. You got to get yourself up into that safe state before you can do some of this work. And what we're going to talk about today is shaking. There's actually animals in the wild after a stressful event. They will shake their body to reset their nervous system. You might have seen this. You might have seen your dog like go crazy barking at something, or someone's dog and the hair on their back stands up and, something really stresses them out. And then afterwards they do kind of the dog shake like they do when they're wet. That is them resetting their nervous system. And that actually works for us too. There are actually practices of somatic shaking, but to just make it really simple, you could even start with one of our breath work pieces, but even if you don't, just giving yourself like a little bit of a shake, loosening your jaw and your neck and just kind of shaking your body out, or shaking your arm out and moving it around. I'm moving my arms, or be silly with it and just move your whole body around. This is a great one to do with kids too, because you don't have to get them to sit still and breathe, but you can like tell them to blow out the candles and shake their body as hard as they can. And it really can reset your nervous system. So shake it out if you need to reset, and get back to those 8 C's and your safe state self. All right. Thank you so much for listening. Like, follow the podcast if you are interested. It helps me very much. And I have one more final episode of just me talking, and then I'm going to try to get some more people in here with amazing thoughts and experts to talk about all the different ways that our nervous systems affect us in everyday life. Thank you very much. Thank you for navigating your nervous system with me.